Morning people wake up for peace and quiet. McDonald's breakfast people, we wake up for the sweet rush of getting that warm, delicious breakfast right before it ends.
Crush your morning goals with a steak, egg, and cheese bagel or any breakfast sandwich and snag another one for just $1 with the buy one, get one deal. Only in the McDonald's app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid once per day. Must opt into rewards.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
There's a poem, I think it's Adrian Rich, although don't quote me on this, but it's called Diving into the Wreck. And the very simple image of it is that a scuba diver dives into the wreckage underwater. And in her hand, she has a book of myths. And it's like she's looking for something. And in the wreckage, and I think that it's the wreckage of one's own life, you do discover little treasures and gems. But the very end of the poem says that the diver recognizes that her name is not written in the book, which is another way of saying, I think, if I'm even understanding the poem, it's kind of a difficult poem. I think she's saying that when you go searching for someone else's symbols, they always leave you empty. The search is worth it because it takes you into the wreckage of your own life. It like gives you a map. But we think the map is going to lead to the, or it's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We're going to follow that and there it's going to be there. But actually when we dive deep enough, we realize, oh, my name is not in this myth. And I am now responsible for uncovering the myth and symbols of my own life.
These songs have your soul replaced every verse. I thought to myself, could the love get much worse if the light goes out?
Oh man, how you doing, man?
Doing good. We haven't done this in a while.
Are you hungry for some turkey?
You know what? I had a little bit over the weekend, and
You had turkey over the weekend?
I did. We had a Friendsgiving with some of Jamie's former jazzercise
I love Friendsgivings.
friends. Yes, my wife used to be a jazzercise instructor.
Yes, she did.
That
is not how you met, though. I just want to clarify.
No. Although I did do jazzercise one time because she said,
a supportive guy.
Well, of course, and she said if she made it through. Because the training thing that you have to go through in order to get certified to be a trainer is super intense.
Take it seriously over there.
It's not like the Zumba. Okay?
Jay Sizen.
But yeah, I was like, if you make it through this, you have to audition and all stuff. And I was like, if you make it through, I will come to one of your classes. And I went, and this is before I started working out again, and I thought I was going to die. So it's a lot of cardio.
So you had the jazzercise group over for a Friendsgiving, and you ate some turkey. I've not had turkey yet this year, and I'm really excited because I'm going to be getting my Alton Brown turkey brine on.
Oh, are you cooking it?
Oh, I always cook it.
You guys don't even know. Adam is a gourmet chef.
I'm not a gourmet chef.
You are a gourmet chef.
I wanted to be a gourmet chef when I was in high school, though.
I think, honestly, I'm not going to say you miss your calling because you're very good at what you do. But like, it's certainly like a situation where, what's her name from Saved by the Bell, who has her cooking show now?
She has a cooking show?
Who
has a cooking show from Saved by the Bell? How do I not know about this?
She was also on 90210.
Kelly Kapowski has a cooking show?
Yes.
What are you talking about? Tiffany Amber Thiessen has a cooking show?
Yes.
You're blowing my mind right now.
I think it's
on
called
the air.
Dinner at Tiffany's, I think, if I remember correctly, and it's really good. She's legit, man. She can throw down in the kitchen, and she has like guests over all the time.
Fifth grade, I had a teen magazine poster of Kelly Kapowski.
Yeah, you did.
In my locker.
Of course you did.
Fifth grade. Don't you dare judge me.
Oh.
Deconstructionist audience. Don't you dare judge me.
I had my mind blown the other day because I didn't put two and two together. Like, she called it out on the show. She had mentioned the fact that she spent a lot of time in two different diners. And I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, oh my gosh. She was on Saved by the Bell and 90210.
Boom.
Why did I never connect that? I don't know. So anyway,
I love our rabbit trails that we just have.
So you could do that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Adam is an insanely good cook.
I do. I love to cook, man.
Yeah.
I just love food. I'm one of those people that, like, no matter how much money I had the rest of my life, I don't think I just don't care. Like house, car, watches, like fancy stuff like that. Food and booze, dude.
Yep.
And friends. Like, that kind of thing. Like anything that gathers people around, like gets, everybody excited.
Yeah.
It's fun stuff.
Agreed, man. I'm with you.
I like eating and drinking with you, man.
Oh, one of my favorite things to do. We go to the Narlock's house. We sit down. Adam whips up this delicious gourmet meal with this huge spread. And then he cracks some of his fine wine, and we pop some music on, and we just sit around and hang out.
It's a good time.
It's wonderful.
We're going to have to do that for my wife's 40th birthday coming up.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody out there in Deconstructionist land.
Yes.
We're happy to be here with you guys again. Hopefully you enjoyed last week's fantastic episode with Caitlin Curtis.
Yeah.
Really got a lot of love on that episode. So if you haven't checked out her book yet, Glory Happening, make sure you do. Tell her we sent you. And we've got something really tasty.
Yeah.
Tasty this week.
Yeah. Yeah. So this dude's book is incredible. It's called Bitten by a Camel. We got Kent Dobson this week. And for those of y'all that don't know who Kent Dobson is, so Kent Dobson and Kent Dobson's dad, Ed Dobson, I believe,
Dobson.
Helped like form the church that Rob Bell was famous for.
Yeah, Rob Bell worked
preaching.
for Kent's dad.
Yep.
And planted a church out of Kent Dobson's dad's church.
Yep.
And now, then Kent ended up taking it over.
After Rob left, right?
After Rob left.
Yeah.
He was the worship pastor and has just done some really unusual and incredible things around Christian spirituality, really digging into Jewish roots. And he edited a whole commentary of scripture, like with all this like great Jewish tradition and Hebrew tradition and knowledge in it. If you've got the name of that there, pull that up. But he's just got some really great perspectives. And he himself has done quite a bit of deconstructing and reconstructing. And he's wise, and he is here to talk with us about all the unusual things that are going on in our lives, in your lives, the listeners, and kind of everything that's been swirling around us in this whole conversation with some really neat, fresh perspectives. And man, we really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite conversations we've had this year. So yeah, Kent is a scholar and former pastor, so he also left Marcel at one point. To go on his journey, and he guides wilderness-based programs designed to cultivate human wholeness and raise questions of the soul. So I thought that was super cool. It reminds me of kind of like what our good friend Dr. Alexander Shia does.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Just finding the divine in nature. I think there's definitely something
you think
to be said for that.
You think the divine might be in nature?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Do you think we ignore nature too much? I think we do.
Not sure if the divine could be in nature. That seems like a stretch.
I know. Diana Butler Bass would definitely strongly disagree with that, right?
She would strongly disagree.
Yeah. So, so he leads pilgrimage adventures to Israel. He's the editor of the NIV First Century Study Bible.
That's the one.
He's a busy boy.
He's a really busy boy, and it's a good book. Mm-hmm. And it feels, you know what I like about it is it feels like it's written by a friend who may be a step ahead of you.
Yeah.
A really smart friend who may be a step ahead of you, and you're reading it going, oh, yeah, so you've been there. All right, and you've got some things to say about that.
Yeah.
That's comforting. Thank you.
Off topic, but I just had a really great idea. So like Kent and Shia both do these adventure tours or whatever.
Uh-oh.
One of my favorite shows of all time is Dual Survivor. So we should do that.
Reality show with Shia and Kent Dobson.
Just in the wilderness.
In the wilderness.
Like embracing the divine.
Who can find more of the divine?
That's true.
In a 6-week adventure.
Yeah. And teach you how to light a fire with practically nothing on hand.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so good.
I love it. You're welcome.
That just happened. Hopefully there's a television producer listening to this right now. But we need to get to this interview because, guys, just settle in. This would be a good one to like pour yourself a drink at night. You're going to feel like you're just sitting with some good friends, having a cup of coffee or a tasty beverage of some kind, and just really hearing a lot of great wisdom and great perspective. I don't want to, no spoiler alerts. Let's let it all speak for itself. Happy Thanksgiving. For those of you that are all jumping on and supporting us on Patreon, you are really feeding what are going to be some really cool things that happen next year. So thank you for that. hopefully you enjoy your treats that John sends out for you with TLC and love. He hugs every single one of those gifts.
I do.
Big squeeze before he sends them out. Hopefully you're enjoying the book club. And if you need to know more about that, please check out our newly designed website, www.thedeconstructionist.com, redone by the Ryan Battles.
So good.
Ryan freaking Battles. And there you'll find everything from social media to Patreon and everything like that. So give that a check. Thanks for everybody who's supporting us on the Twitters and on social media and the 5-star iTunes reviews. We've been getting a lot more reviews lately, so thank you for that. Helps people find us. And we're just really, really excited to give you guys some Kent freaking Dobson. So without further ado, Kent freaking Dobson. All right, well, Kent freaking Dobson, welcome to the Deconstructionist podcast, man. This has been a long time coming. I'm so glad that we could finally make this happen. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So for those of our listeners who aren't maybe as familiar with your work, maybe give us a little a brief introduction to who you are and how you got into the work that you do today.
All right. Let's see. Well, I grew up down south on Jerry Falwell's lap. And that's not like a metaphor. So my dad worked for him, and then I went to Liberty, Falwell's school, and maybe I had most of my body outside of evangelical Christianity, but maybe one foot still in it in those days. And and Liberty was actually kind of an interesting experience. I had really good teachers in the courses that I took, but then it also has this whole weird political, religious, cultural, milieu going on. And then after college, I got married and right away worked with Rob Bell at this new church that was just starting up. So Rob worked for my dad. So my dad worked for Falwell, and then Rob worked for my dad, and then he started his own church, and I did the music there for a while. Yeah, and then I went away to graduate school, moved to Israel, and ever since then I've been kind of like staggering in and out of things. In and out of the church world, in and out of teaching. I was a school teacher for a while. I taught religion and Bible. And worked on a massive project called the NIV First Century Study Bible, which Zondervan did. I did that for like 4 years while I was teaching. And then eventually Rob Bell left I don't know what he left. He left Mars Hill in Michigan, but then just went to LA and got some sun.
Yeah, he did.
And then I took his job and did that for almost 4 years until I couldn't do it anymore. Wow. That's like a drive-through version. And then I wrote a book after that.
Oh man, there's so many places we could touch just in that. Like, you gave us an intro for our questions to intro back to you. So this is like ping pong. This will be great. So is from a spiritual journey perspective, like, I know you include a lot of this stuff in your book and we want to kind of dive into the book, but for, maybe some listeners that, we've got a kind of a broad base of people that were raised, in a certain way in the church or in Christianity, and have, since done some journeying outside or back in or whatever. But then we have other people that are agnostic or atheist or, whatever. And, describe a little bit more what your kind of spiritual evolution has looked like over the past, couple decades. What's that been like?
God, that is a hard question.
Yeah.
I mean, how does one map their own very slow evolution?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking the other day about what amounts to a seminal moment in my life. When I was in high school, I was watching MTV Live, Unplugged.
Yeah.
And Pearl Jam was on.
Nice.
And I loved Pearl Jam back then. And I still do. How can you not?
Heck yeah.
How can you not?
And so anyway, Eddie Vedder's playing a song, and he stands up on this stool, you know, in one of his weird kind of possessed states, and takes a magic marker and writes on his arm, on his left arm, the words pro-choice. And for some reason, this sent like a chill through my body, just like this. I don't know, it was like a vibration. I was like, God. And it actually didn't really have anything necessarily to do with the political issue. It was something of, well, in Jungian psychology, it might have been a step toward individuation. Like, wait, who am I? Am I a free human being or not? Do I have choice, or am I just going to go along with this like religious landscape that I've been raised in? And you know, I was in high school, and you know, somewhat of a rebel and that sort of thing, whatever that means. But I don't know, that this was part of the seeds of doubt, maybe, that were already residing in my soul, or something that I did not quite understand, and I could not say yes fully to the Christian world, to the church, and certainly not to the external issues that the church cares about, like whatever, you know, I don't know, all the political, religious issues that Falwell maybe was concerned about, but on maybe the more spiritual level, I could not put my full weight in the chair. But that took 10, 15, 20 years to keep working on me. Some people maybe get lucky and they're like, you know, F all y'all, I'm out of here. You know, it was maybe one step forward, two steps back, and then, you know, a sprint, and then I don't know. It was more of a slow evolution. And I wanted the church to work, sure. I guess. You know, I thought for a long time, well, I've got the wrong conceptions of God. So maybe if I had a more Jewish God, or, you know, if Jesus was more Jewish, or if I could like really get into cultural context and, you know, really get back to, I don't know, the purity of something, or clean it all up from its religious mess. But there's no bottom to that well. And then probably in terms of externals, I thought for a long time I was just in the wrong religion. So maybe I should just be Catholic or Orthodox or Episcopalian, or I want to stop making it all up. That's the way evangelical Christianity felt to me. We're just going to make up doctrines and belief statements and even rituals. Like, we'll just throw in a little of this and that and call it good. And that felt so empty. But I could not find a home. A lot of my friends found a home. They're like, became Orthodox Christians or Episcopalians or Lutherans or whatever. I couldn't do it. So, I don't know. I don't know if that, like I said before, it's a hard thing to map, the inner journey, but it has been a slow, I think, realization and coming to terms with the truth of my own life. And I think that's probably the path for everybody, the truth of their own life. What's true on the level of the soul. And when there are a lot of religious layers between the soul, or the true self, that's what Thomas Merton would call it. Yeah. And when there are a lot of religious layers, it's hard to keep excavating.
Man, that's so good.
So it sounds like you had already started to wrestle with questions and really just kind of start to take a deeper dive, even as far back as university. And so, like, if we look forward into your future, you know, from college into the time that you took over for Rob Bell at this massive church, I remember seeing in one an article that was done on you right around the time that you were actually leaving. You had mentioned that one of the things that drew you to Mars Hill was the fact that it was the first church that you had ever encountered where you could actually ask questions and still go to church. So yeah. Obviously, there's still some questions that were that were still kind of rolling around in your brain. And so at what point did you decide, like, this just isn't working. I need to leave the church as a pastor and kind of pursue something different?
Well, that maybe took a year or two to come to.
Yeah.
And it included therapy and and some raw honesty about what am I doing. In fact, I wrote Mary Oliver's poem on my whiteboard, The Journey, which is, the opening line is, one day you finally knew what you had to do, and you began. And I read that poem almost every day. Every day I went into the office, I looked at it, I was like, God, something is happening, and I do not know what it is, and I don't know if I've already begun or if I'm about to begin. And the second part of that poem, the continuation is, one day you finally knew what you had to do, and you began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. And I think the moment I realized that there are external voices shouting their bad advice, and when I stopped projecting all those, it was true that external voices were shouting their bad advice, but I was also sort of putting that out there, like in a projection kind of sense.
Sure.
I was shouting my own bad advice. Like,
oh man, yeah.
Just hang in there. It doesn't really matter what you believe. You're doing a good thing anyway. You're pretty good at public speaking. People like what you say, blah, blah, blah. You make a good living. Once I realized, no, I'm not going to navigate my way through this. My ego or whatever, I don't know, just my persona is unable to chart a path forward, that it was sort of in a flash, like, nope, I'm done. And
wow.
And I also realized too, I mean, some of this had to do with the same-sex conversation. I was so over talking about gay people. I could not bear it. It had been 3.5 years of the same exact questions, and I felt completely stuck. And I was totally open with anyone who asked me, what do you believe about this? But we were trying to be this church that could be all things to all people.
Sure.
And it just was really weighing on me. And I realized that in one paragraph on a Sunday morning, I could blow up a mega church.
Wow.
And I realized I'm not going to do that. That's somebody else's. I don't care enough to draw a line in the sand and say, everybody follow me. You could say I didn't have the courage, but I just felt like this is not mine to do. And what then? So I blow up the church, and half the people sort of become pro-Kent, and half the people turn their backs. Right. And then what? I leave after 2 years?
Right.
Well, actually, I'm moving on now. Thanks.
Good for you, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's but it happened at the kitchen window. I'm standing there. I just thought, I'm not going to do it anymore. And 2 days later, I told the board, and the board said, 1 week from now, you have to tell the congregation. And it was like as fast as I could get out of there. I was gone.
Dude, I watched that video. I think it was Tony Jones tweeted it. He was like, the day Kent Dobson fired himself. and I know it sounds funny, and Tony meant it like a little tongue in cheek, obviously funny. Yeah. And he's a friend and a good, been a guest, and he's a good dude. And I loved it though, because it made me go back and watch the video of the day that you did that. And there was can I just I want to applaud you, because you did it with so much grace and humility and maturity and honesty. And you didn't feel the need to give some kind of well-packaged, scripted answer. And I just want you to know, as somebody that was, in a similar situation, or soon to find himself in a similar situation, it gave me a great deal of hope that you were just the best of my recollection is the thing that sticks out to me is when you just said, I'm not called to the center, I'm called more to the margins. I'm called more to the edges. And this just isn't going to work. And
yep,
dude, that is huge.
Well, I mean, it comes with the territory. I mean, there's a certain amount of I remember even one time one of the elders was like, look, at least once a month you have to give a sermon that is about the center, and why, and even more specifically, why this church is really better than the one down the street. That's the way the machine works. And I said, it might work that way, but you need to give that sermon because I can't.
Mm-hmm.
There are things I like about this place, but I can't defend the center. I can't. It's like, I used to work for a Christian school. One time the principal said, we understand that you keep stirring up snakes in the grass. That was his metaphor. Keep stirring up snakes in the grass. But every once in a while, you have to cut their heads off so that everybody knows, all right, we stirred up the snake, but I chopped its head off. Don't worry. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that and sort of look myself in the mirror, at the end of the day. Yeah. So
it's almost like saying, like, we're going to let you play around a little bit, but at the end of the day, you need to come back and like do exactly what we want you to do. We're going to give people the illusion that there's some freedom here to actually like think, but we don't want them to actually think.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of what happened to Rob too, because Rob is a funny guy. He's clever and he's good at public speaking, and he says radical things in a funny way, and people don't really hear what he's saying. Except when he puts it down on a piece of paper. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? I thought,
I'm sure we don't know what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So a lot of this, comes in, we're touching on concepts that you cover in your book. You've got a new book out. It's fantastic. It's personal. It's real. It's wise. There's so much there. And we're already kind of starting to touch on like a lot of the concepts that come from this. So it is to a degree autobiographical, but there's so much that everybody can relate to, which is what a good autobiographical, book should do. So why write, like, so many of these things happened so long ago, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah, the opening story is maybe 10 years ago.
Right.
Yep.
So it's not easy to write a book, especially one like this. So why did you write it? Why this? How did it take form? Tell us a little bit of the kind of behind the scenes of Bitten by a Camel, which everybody should definitely go grab.
Yeah, thanks. Well, some of it was that when I lived in Israel and I was going to graduate school and living in Israel at the time, this was during the Second Intifada, so bus bombings and conflicts with Palestinians and Israelis, and we had a firsthand experience of that. And I was there with my wife and kids, and we shopped and ate, and we lived there. We weren't tourists. We were expats, I guess. And that was such I think maybe an earth-shattering experience that I maybe went into a little bit of spiritual PTSD.
Whoa.
And maybe even, there were some traumatic things that I saw and experienced and felt, and it probably took 10 years to really work through them. Even the kind of funny story of climbing Mount Sinai, looking for some kind of answer from God, which is the opening story, and then only to get bitten by a camel. That was
assaulted.
It sounds like, assaulted, exactly.
Assaulted by a camel.
In today's political, cultural climate, it probably wouldn't be a bestseller. Assaulted by a camel.
True.
You never know. You never know, man.
Yeah.
Marketing is a funny thing.
It is a funny thing. So, but anyway, even that story, it had to work on me, and it had to work on me as a symbol from my life. I mean, and that's what I think a lot of spirituality really is: paying very careful attention to the actual events of your life and what they symbolize. And sometimes it comes, the events become a kind of symbol for who you are and who you are becoming, and that's why I had to reach back 10 years. I'm not like much of a blogger, like whatever is currently running through some of my sermons maybe are more like blogs. But when it comes to writing, I don't know. It just takes me a while. So yeah, so the process was, just briefly, Tony Jones and Doug Padgett asked me to Christianity 21, this little event where you're supposed to speak for 21 minutes. And that was the story that popped into my head. And I had never really told that story publicly. And as soon as I was done, I thought, I could turn this into something. It took me like another 3 years, but even the outline of the book was born in those 21 minutes. And kind of what was collapsing around my own faith and theology. Yeah, and then Fortress Press, they were kind enough to come to me and say, we think you should write something. And I gave them this as an idea, and away we went.
I was just a wandering soul, working through the highs and lows. I heard a spirit whisper slow, drifting to a great unknown. Will anybody see my...
So there's this clear outline, I think, of, from the very beginning. You talk about going to Liberty, through university, and starting to question then, and never quite feeling like you fit into the fundamentalism movement and that sort of thing, all the way up to the point where you go into the ministry, you go overseas, and it just seems like it's pretty obvious you're looking for some sort of a spiritual experience, and I think a lot of us can identify with that.
Oh yeah.
I was born and raised Lutheran, and so a lot of the evangelical flavor was very foreign to me. And so when I went to college and met my friends and got involved in some more charismatic evangelical style worship services, I can kind of relate with you, because I've heard you mention the fact that worship music is not exactly your cup of tea.
Is it anyone's, really, honestly?
I was like, oh, this is just like cheesy rock music. Okay. So, but yeah, so there were, not just obviously the worship music, but there are a lot of aspects to the service that were, kind of a culture shock for me. And I remember seeing, some very tangible things that were occurring within those services, like people receiving prayer and like getting visions and that sort of thing. And I remember becoming very frustrated, saying like, well, why don't I get those as well?
Oh, dude.
And
Totally.
Why can't I speak in tongues and all these sorts of things? And just
Still mad about that one.
yeah, I didn't get any of the gifts. I was really just kind of frustrated. Like I felt like this, this sense of seeking and wanting to know and having all these questions that were unanswered, and then just having more questions that were unanswered, just by virtue of experiencing evangelical style Christianity. And so I can also remember wanting to have this grand experience, something that would just knock me off my feet and say, there it is.
Yeah.
And so you took it to the extreme where you went over to Mount Sinai, and I know you kind of briefly mentioned it. You're looking for this experience, and you end up, essentially almost getting your arm chewed off by a camel. This thing had your arm in its mouth, and so I love when you were talking about this experience on Pete Rollins' podcast on his Facebook Live, where you suddenly started to realize that maybe it wasn't going to happen in the way that you thought it would.
Yeah.
So at what point did you realize that maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way?
Yeah, that is one of the moments where I tried to describe in the book a wedge that was forming, or I think it was already there, but I became more conscious of it. And the wedge was between what I was actually experiencing and what I was supposed to experience. And to be honest, none of my so-called spiritual experiences have in any way conformed to how I thought they were supposed to. Like, oh, I prayed all night and then God told me X, or I really got into the worship music and the Spirit filled me, or whatever. I just didn't have these experiences. And actually, I didn't really, I've never felt, taken, I guess would be one way of saying it, in any kind of religious service. And it takes a while to admit that, but beyond that, in my private life, like in one's own private spirituality, which is probably much more important than what goes on in a building, that was also not really working for me. And I was trying, I wanted to. For a while, I was fascinated with Judaism, and I really was like, I was considering converting because it gave me what I thought I was missing was, I've always like doubted things, but there was this kind of certainty that came with Judaism that wasn't rooted so much in belief. It was like, no, we live this way, and we trust that living this way is God is pleased with or something, but it's also good for us, good for the soul, good for community, good for, and there's a lot of flexibility inside Judaism, I mean, maybe it's like Catholicism too, in that it can absorb a lot of diversity. And that was kind of fresh for me. And I loved the rabbinic sort of question, answering a question with a question, kind of Socrates sort of orientation. But anyway, it's, I just was so hungry, and it also was ancient, just give me something ancient to do. But that felt like, after a while, kind of play acting, living in Israel, celebrating the feasts because that's what other people are doing. And I was kind of a little bit caught up in the term I do not like at all, but Messianic Judaism, where you have basically Christians who are pretending to be Jews, or Jews who, somehow have some faith in Jesus, which is not a very popular community, especially in Israel.
Right.
But anyway, I had some friends who were kind of like this, and I don't know, and they did it with a lot of genuine commitment, and I respected that. But I think maybe what I'm trying to say is it took me a very long time to recognize whatever it is I'm looking for is not in any institutional church, and any ritual, technique, whatever, is not going to be some sort of golden ticket to divine encounter, divine experience, union, non-dual consciousness, whatever it is I was, wanted or was longing for.
Yeah, I see this so much, in my time as a pastor and personally, if I'm going to be introspective, I think that so much of your journey and so much of what you go into in Bitten by a Camel is so symbolic for so many of us, if we can start to understand symbol, which actually I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But don't we all go to the bookstore or the iTunes podcast search bar, or, a worship night, or a monastery, or whatever, thinking that there is just some pool that I've missed? It's got to be deeper than this. I'm not going to tell people I'm unsatisfied, because that wouldn't be very popular, and then people are going to ask me to start confessing my sin, and asking me about my spiritual life, and asking me if I'm looking at porn, or whatever. But there's just this paranoia and this like almost spiritual FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's quiet time on Instagram looks amazing. You've got you, right? You've got your. I love it. Like I'm guilty, man. I have posted those years ago. Bible laying out perfectly, cup of coffee, sun's rays creeping through the window.
There's got to be a candle in there.
Candle in there. I think I've done it with a candle before, and it looks like the freaking beams in like a great like Michelangelo or Da Vinci,
like a hipster monastery
painting, and we're all sucked into this like spiritual FOMO, and we're all walking around like looking for. We want depth, and we're just not going to be honest about the fact that we're really not getting it.
Yep. There's a poem I think it's Adrian Rich, although don't quote me on this, but it's called Diving into the Wreck. And the very simple image of it is that a scuba diver dives into the wreckage underwater. And in her hand, she has a book of myths. And it's like she's looking for something. And in the wreckage, and I think that it's the wreckage of one's own life, you do discover little treasures and gems. But the very end of the poem says that the diver recognizes that her name is not written in the book, which is another way of saying, I think, if I'm even understanding the poem, it's kind of a difficult poem. I think she's saying that when you go searching for someone else's symbols, they always leave you empty. The search is worth it because it takes you into the wreckage of your own life. It like gives you a map. But we think the map is going to lead to the, or it's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We're going to follow that, and there it's going to be there. But actually, when we dive deep enough, we realize, oh, my name is not in this myth, and I am now responsible for uncovering the myth and symbols of my own life. At least that's kind of where I'm at now. And
I like it.
And how I think, it's long been said that religions are kind of the institutionalizing of someone else's experience. And that's fine as far as that goes, because at least it says there are people who have had experiences.
Sure. I get that.
Depth.
Yeah.
They have depth.
It's possible. It's possible.
It's possible. But just like, what do we expect that if we go to the Jordan River and go under the water, when we come back out, where the Spirit is going to descend on us like a dove? Well, no, that was the experience that Jesus had. It's a symbol for him, and perhaps it's like there's some transpersonal symbols in that dove. It's not even a dove, it's just said like a dove, but whatever. There's something in it that's important, that's transpersonal, but that doesn't mean we go and do that thing. Like if I just did it that way down at that river, wearing the special linen garments or whatever, I don't know.
Right.
And I'm going to get it's going to work magically for me. No, I don't think so.
Don't wait for me to come back. Don't wait for me to come back around. Though we've drifted far apart, you were always
so good.
There's a religion professor I had in college who we spoke with when we first started this podcast.
Dr. Ray Bryant?
Yeah, and our favorite quote by him, I think ever, was you can either take your own spiritual journey or someone else will take you on theirs.
Yes.
And
I think
that jives with what you're saying. And I think this is a great place because I think that the three of us probably share a lot of love for metaphor and mythology and that sort of thing. I know you talk a lot about it. And I think collectively the three of us can drag Peter Rollins kicking and screaming into some Joseph Campbell,
some Joey Cams.
Mm-hmm. I think he needs to. I think the two were born to meet. Yes,
we're trying, man.
Some Joey Cams.
We're trying. John actually sent him a Joseph Campbell book.
I said, "All right, if I have to buy you this book so that you sit down and read it, because Pete talks about myth all the time
math.
Yes, we're not really sure. He might not be talking about
Maybe
meth.
He's actually talking about meth.
He might be on meth.
Also a possibility. I think there's a lot that you say about you get into, I think, some hero's journey stuff, and I know that you're also a fan of Richard Rohr, and I think Rohr does a really succinct job of talking about the hero's journey and how that that journey, that metaphor, transcends all cultures and religions, and it shows up everywhere throughout time.
Archetype.
Archetype. And I know you talk about that a little bit, so I would love to hear your thoughts on how important that is and how that plays a role.
Yeah, well, I think personally, my wife was pointing this out the other day. She's like, just don't forget how much Joseph Campbell rocked you. When I first encountered him on the Bill Moyers interviews, I rented him from the library. Well, you don't rent. I borrowed them from the library.
Yeah.
Watched several times. And I even came back to them just before I quit Mars Hill. I mean, I think they were like in my psyche. And the interview is especially, I find so profound. But I think for me, it tapped into something that I knew was true, because I studied English in college, and that was also a love of mine in high school. So just stories in general, stories and plays, and that was kind of the way I thought about the Bible, but I just didn't have quite words for it, literature of the Bible kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as soon as he started talking that way about all religions, spirituality, and really great stories, I was like, oh my God, this, it just resonated so deeply with kind of my intuitions. And and he's right. And I think with the hero's journey, first of all, I have mixed feelings about that word right now, the hero's journey, because first of all, our culture is obsessed with heroes. Everybody who goes off to war is a hero right now. Every like Hollywood blockbuster has a quote hero's thread through it. But really, if you look carefully at Joseph Campbell's work, and even before that, Jung's work with archetypes, you have really two kinds of heroes' journeys. And one is the adolescent version. I hint at this in my book. The adolescent version is kind of like, times got tough, but we were victorious in the end. We defeated the enemy. We got the girl. It's a winner's script. It is about winning in the end. Doing, sacrificing yourself, yes, but for the bigger cause, and even saying something like "Make America Great Again" has these kind of adolescent themes to it. We're gonna fight the good fight and be triumphant, and we'll know we're the best because we succeed in the end. But that's not what Joseph Campbell's means at all about the hero's journey. He says that you go out, the hero goes out and is dismantled, dismembered, buried, dies. All his illusions are stripped away. He's lost in the woods, and nobody wants to talk about that. That's the hero's journey in its more richer nuances. And I think America, I mean, here I'm speaking just kind of like as a ordinary, regular old citizen. I'm no expert, but it seems like we're even coming to the end of our own adolescent heroes myth, that we're the best, the brightest, the smartest. God likes us the best. Yeah. We have the most money. And really everything that we do, there might, we might admit a few mistakes, but by and large, we've been mainly about the good, and everyone else has been about the bad. That kind of whitewashed adolescent hero story has now come to an end. And that's why the culture feels like such a mess. It's like people are like, no, we got to go back. We got to recover recover our story, and other people are like, it's over. Of course, that's what happens when these big cycles start unraveling. And I think even my own spiritual unraveling is just partly because that's what's in the air. But Joseph Campbell would say that's the thing that has to happen. Yeah. The egoic persona of who we think we are has to die, go into the ground. We have to be embarrassed. We have to fail. And Richard Rohr is popularizing these themes with a book like Falling Upward, which is like, there are two halves of life. And if you want to get to anything close to wisdom, you're going to have to fail. And things are going to have to not work out. Anyway.
No, I love where you go with that in your book, where you talk about instead of kind of avoiding the chaos, pressing into the chaos or turning towards the chaos. And if I could pump the ego of my friend here, Adam actually, that resonated with me specifically because Adam, he didn't know it was going to be his last sermon at that particular moment, but the last sermon he ended up giving was all about embracing the struggle and pressing into the pain, because life is not all about like just avoiding pain and suffering. Yeah, it's not the way it works. Mm-hmm. And I love how you kind of say the same thing. In like we don't avoid the chaos. We don't avoid the pain. We have to push into it if we hope to learn anything or evolve or advance as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You have to walk toward the darkness. And again, to return to Joseph Campbell, sometimes you need a guide. Sometimes you need to bump into an archetypal guide that's going to lure you over the edge. And a lot of religious language tries to keep people from falling off the cliff. Don't go any further. It's too dangerous. You're going to die. You're going to mess up. You're not going to be liked. So it takes really a lot of inner courage and a lot of trepidation to walk toward these darker things, to walk toward bits and pieces of your own shadow, to walk toward your wounds, I think is what we're really talking about. And to allow our illusions to be dismantled by the mystery of life. God, who would want that?
Right.
Well, one wants it when they've reached the end, I think I keep thinking about what I've been calling patterns of severance. I got that phrase from one of my teachers, Bill Plotkin. But patterns of severance. Why is it that some people walk out, leave, allow their worldview to unravel, and why don't other people? Well, one of the patterns seems to be that you've actually had enough successes and you have formed a social identity in some sense. Like, for example, I made it. I'm a mega church pastor. I get paid for this. I have tremendous flexibility. People know my name. I'm married. I've got a house. Like I've succeeded enough. But when those social identities no longer make sense, like you can't identify as that anymore, that's a pattern of severance. Then you're about to get kicked into the next phase. You're about to descend, and it's scary. It really is scary.
And do you know the funny thing about that? Because, so much of the language that we're using right now is really all we mean when we say deconstruction. Like, we're not talking about it in like the immature, like, screw your parents and their religion and tear it all up and burn it down because whatever. And no, we're talking about like the language of the hero's journey. We're talking about one of my favorite ways to talk about this is like Nietzsche would talk about how he philosophized with a hammer. Because he saw so much BS in so much of what everyone was saying, not just religion and spirituality. Like he had a problem with Plato. I mean, he had a problem with a ton of people. And he'd say, I philosophize with my hammer. I smash these idols that you've constructed. And so much of what we're talking about in leaving home or smashing idols or doing, the things that you're talking about is what we mean by deconstruction. And really it's just coming to the point, like you just said, where that thing that I staked everything on can't bear the weight of it anymore. And to be honest, it's not something that we are trying to rush anybody into at all. Like, in fact, now that we're starting to be like kind of known for having this conversation, if a friend kind of comes out of the woodwork and starts to say something like alluding to the fact that they're starting to become a little disillusioned, or they're starting to like maybe start to drop hints that like maybe there's some questions they're starting to be willing to ask, I honestly start to feel bad for them. Like my first inclination is like, oh no, like you're about to open it up now, man. Like, oh,
I know.
No going back.
I'm not like jazzed about it. Like, yeah, I want to kick you off the cliff. Here we go.
No.
There's an empathy there.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think anybody should be in the position of kicking people over the cliff. You can lure people maybe to the edge. You can say it's going to hurt, but it's also going to be okay. But just shoving people off, that doesn't probably serve. That's not very helpful. Maybe it's impossible, really. But
Yeah.
and I think I love this image with the hammer, because I think two things were happening, and I get to some of this maybe in the book. I did take a hammer to a few of the precious idols of evangelical Christianity, like Original Sin, for
Yeah.
example,
That was
or
one of my
the
favorite
Afterlife.
parts of the book. I love
Yeah.
that.
And but that's not the kind of deconstruction that was, or that's maybe one face of deconstruction. These don't work for me. I mean, maybe they maybe never have, and I'm gonna take my hammer to them a little bit. But there's also the mystery of a hammer that's happening in my own heart.
That's
like,
it.
I'm getting smashed to bits. I don't have the answer. I wish I could replace it with, and that's what happens to a lot of people. They were fundamentalists, and they smash up one little bit of fundamentalism, and then they just quickly adopt another one.
Yes.
See that all the
and
time, man.
That's not a shift in consciousness, and that's not allowing the mystery of the unknown to keep smashing little bits of your of your inner world up, till maybe you're lost enough where you're groping around in the dark long enough where the little seeds of something new you sort of stumble into, maybe.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
I remember my therapist what said. I may have put this in the book. I don't remember. But I said to him, I'm afraid that my life is going to fall apart. He said, I'm here to make sure that happens.
Oh.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like an awesome response, but I was like, oh, I guess that's what we're talking about,
That's what we're talking about.
And thank God I had a therapist like that, instead of one that was like, well, I can give you some techniques for making sure you don't fall apart.
You're like, oh, no. We're not going to let that happen. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so something real quick, because we've talked a little bit about this, but I think this requires a little explanation, and I've heard you explain this before, and you're good at it. So I want to kind of bait you into explaining a little something here. So you talk about events in your life, and then by extension, other people's lives, people we read about, people we encounter, having these events that have significance, a meaning, and these events are real. They're real events. They really happen. Like, you really climbed Sinai. You really got bitten by a camel. You really had, the experiences in your book that you talk about. They were real events. But then the layer that you go to that I think is so critical that people start to understand is those events become symbolic. They become symbols that it takes a long time for that meaning to kind of dissolve and for you to really kind of grasp that meaning. And then that symbolic meaning can actually have meaning for others. Most people have this false dichotomy of either it's symbolic or it's real. And I think you do a really good job of showing the synergy between these two terms, these two realities, these two ideas. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Maybe in some ways it's kind of like a dream. Like, usually when you have a dream, when you first wake up, you think, your conscious mind thinks, well, that was a weird dream. Or you think that didn't mean anything. Or I'm definitely not going to tell somebody that because they're going to think I have a problem.
Most of my dreams.
But sometimes life is like that too. Like, stuff happens to you and you don't immediately think, oh my God, this. Maybe every once in a while, but usually it's like, like, yeah, that happened to me. Like, yeah, I climbed Mount Sinai, and yes, I got bitten by a camel. But it's like, if you allow the emotions, feelings, sensations keep working on you. And it's like you have to stay curious about your own life. First of all, you have to trust your own life. And most Christians are told, do not trust your own life. You're, desperately wicked or whatever. In fact, deny your life. No, I would say trust the experience of your own life and the confusion of it. Trust the pain in a way, and also those unexpected moments of insight or joy. Get really curious about them, and I think once you do that, then the event itself, you start to tap into the symbolic, or perhaps you could say archetypal elements. Like, it is archetypal to climb a mountain looking for a divine experience. How do we know that? Because it's an archetypal pattern that appears in lots of religions. It appears all over the place in the Bible. And you could even say, it wasn't my idea to do it in the first place. Why did I do it? Because the pattern pre-exists. In other words, I'm not born as a tabula rasa. I came in with, the psyche comes in with a certain shape to it. And the psychic shape of it is that God is oriented up. Now, we know that, like, contemporary theologians will say, well, that's not really true. I understand that, but the way the psyche is shaped, the symbol is sometimes we climb to find God. And what do we find when we get there? And it could be a cloud like Moses, or it could be a still small voice like Elijah, two very different experiences. So I'm almost like playing, you don't realize it, but you're playing a pattern out. And then, but if you pay careful enough attention to it, it can become a symbol. And here's a really good symbol. I'm looking for God, and instead I got bitten by an animal, and it hurt.
I love it.
But
it's great.
But the reason why, it's almost maybe best not to talk about something like that for a few years, because the ego would love nothing more than to snatch that up and quickly make a book out of it, and
a model.
Yeah, exactly. What everyone needs to do is climb and blah blah blah. No, just let it work on you. And
like the ego wants to say eureka.
Yeah, exactly. But being curious would be like, why did I climb this mountain? What was I feeling? What was I longing for? What did I really desire? What was actually disappointing about it that I have a really hard time admitting? And yeah, I don't know, that's like paying attention to the events of your life, and it's almost like you stumble into the symbolic nature of it if you pay careful enough attention. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
One of the other things that I sense, that I take away from that, and that I kind of found in your book as well, is kind of examining what is our vision, what is our view of God, what is our idea of God, and that's something that's been very interesting to me lately. Adam and I reluctantly started a blog, and we are not bloggers. We know that much. We are probably the world's laziest bloggers. So we get one out a month, I think, but one of the ideas, I find myself writing down just random ideas, most of which are complete garbage. But
no, they're not, John. They're wonderful.
Well, thank you. But one of the ideas that keeps coming back to me is something that I think you talk about a lot, and that is how do I view God? What is my image of God? And do I need to let go kind of my past notions of the vision of God that was handed to me? And so I think one of the things that I really like about what you talk about is that, there's a certain degree of ambiguity and mystery that we just need to allow for, and letting go of an insane degree of certainty that brings us comfort. And I know one of the things that you talk about in your book is this idea of the loyal soldier.
Yeah.
Which I love, and which is essentially, as you say, a protection mechanism. It's a way for us to protect ourselves, to provide structure which of course is important, as a child. When you're a kid growing up, you need structure, you need something to lean up against. But as Richard Rohr says, it's necessary. But as you enter into the second half of life, you need to start to kind of push away from that, kick against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe not even kick against it, but thank the soldier for his loyal service, because you don't totally get rid of the soldier. At least that's my understanding of it. What is it? I'll just use a personal example. So I'm raised in a really fundamentalist culture, and I'm told if I don't believe that Jesus lives in my heart, I'm going to be tortured for billions of years.
Yeah.
Now, what did I learn to do? I learned to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that help me? That helped me survive psychically. Because I'm told if this is not true, you're going to be separated from everyone you love, and your skin is going to be on fire, but the fire's never going to be put out, all this kind of stuff. So even though I stopped believing that doesn't mean the soldier does not still live in me. And the soldier wants to keep me safe. So it's going to change its tune based on the sort of environment it finds itself in. It's going to quickly assess, what do I need to do to be safe? Even when I was a pastor, I'm sitting there in elders meetings, and I don't quite see, or I don't quite believe, but quickly I'm scanning the room. What do I need to say to be safe enough in this room? Safe enough, which is another way of saying accepted enough.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the job of the loyal soldier. And once you recognize it as kind of something that's trying to protect you, then you just treat it as kind of all right, this happens to me. Thank you for helping me survive. But if I'm going to grow up and be an adult here, and I'm going to have to step into the truth of my own life, and I don't need your advice anymore. I can have my own thoughts and beliefs, and I'm not going to burn forever in, some sort of lake of fire. Whatever. That's kind of a religious example of how the loyal soldier works. But one reason why I put it in the book is that everybody has these voices.
Yeah.
And we have to turn some conscious attention to them if we're going to do the hard work of weeding through what's really true for me. And so at least I found it kind of an invaluable part of the process. And just to comment just briefly on what you said about images of God, part of at least for me, part of the journey has been a kind of unraveling of my basic images of God. It turns out, I took that really personally. It turns out that's just true across the board.
Yeah.
Everybody has their ideas of God are formed in early childhood and have a lot to do with their parents. And why would that not evolve and change along with everything else? Why would that stay static? And but it's a challenging place to be if you are allowing your own ideas and images of God to evolve, and you work for an institutional church that would like to remain very secure about what it thinks God is.
Right. Right.
And that's why so few people really experience radical transformation, I'm guessing, inside just, I'm just going to church every week, just trying to believe, just sending my kids to Sunday school, and just, I don't know, that doesn't sound like radical transformation. But I think probably the most important thing that I'm still learning is that I don't think one's understanding of oneself and one's understanding of God are holding hands.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
If your ideas of God are changing, your ideas of who you are changing. Yeah. Or the other way around, if your ideas of who you think you are in the world start changing, you better believe your ideas and images of God are going to start shifting and changing.
Dude, yes.
They're holding hands. I mean, it's the way it is, which means it's freaking hard.
Yes. There's this quote, I think it's Augustine, that said, God is closer to me than I am to myself. And that always struck me as I can't wrestle with myself without getting closer to God. And I can't truly wrestle with God without a greater understanding of who I am. And, as much flack as this guy gets, actually, when he was 19 years old, before he was, a namesake of a horrendous tulip analogy, John Calvin wrote that, the two greatest, workings of the Christian religion are an understanding of yourself and an understanding of God.
Yep. Yeah. And
yeah.
That reminded me of St. Anthony. So he's Desert Father, 4th century. And a group comes out to see him, and they want to know what the first most important thing is, whatever, to find God or start this process. And he just simply says, know thyself. I mean, that's the 4th century,
Yeah.
And that sounds like something, a decent therapist would say to you.
Yeah.
Or a good spiritual director. And yeah, so there's wisdom. And it's been there kind of hidden in the back corners of what has passed as Christianity. But yeah, I think that more and more is the invitation. I think people are hungry for that. I think that's why people are listening to podcasts. It's not just consumerism. There's probably an element of that, but they're consuming podcasts and voices and new books and new spiritual practices because they know they don't know themselves very well. And they want to start that process.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that sense too. We want to hear a little bit about kind of what you're doing now, because like we've been talking a lot about transitions, and we know you're still you didn't just write a book. You're incredibly active, and to transition into that, I think something that could be really valuable to our listeners when we start talking about some of that stuff is, myself included, there's a lot of people that have left the church because of this journey. There's a lot of people that don't find themselves at home, and that's painful. And I was wondering if you have learned anything that you could share that could be, just good for people to hear.
Well, the fact that the three of us are talking means that, yeah, people are leaving home, which means they're leaving a relatively safe and sometimes sentimental community. And with it comes loneliness. I mean, lots of people talk about, if I leave, I'm going to be alone. And there's actually a lot of truth to that. Yes, you're going to be alone, but not that alone. And I don't know, we sort of stumble into one another, and it's not so personal. The Phyllis Tickle's 500-year cycle, or what Jung called the axial age, which is like about 600 years before Jesus, with the rise of Greek philosophy and Taoism and Buddhism and all this stuff. As an axial age, we're in another one of those time periods, which just means that everything is in flux, and there's massive shifts, and people feel lost. First of all, I would just say, yes, that means you're on the right track. Wow. If you're super comfortable and you've circled the wagons, you're like, God, I got my bottled water in the basement. We're going to survive this. That's not. That's not real soul change, probably. So anyway, yeah, it does feel lonely. And one of the surprising things, when I left Mars Hill, I knew my phone wasn't going to ring as much. And I even knew that, but I was surprised how real that was. All these relationships that I had, took up hours and hours of my life, just dry up in an instant because dude. I'm not in a role anymore. So yeah, that hurt a little bit. But then also I would get a few surprising emails. I found I didn't even know about this community. There's a community here in West Michigan called C3. And they transitioned out of being a church about 15 years ago. They took the cross down, they sold their building. Eventually they hired, for a while they had an atheist as their main teacher. So it's like a weird mixture of, it's mostly older people, but weird mixture of Christians, former Christians, some Jewish people, Buddhists, just an unusual, eclectic group of people. And so I started teaching there a bit, and now I'm doing half the Sundays of the year, which I'm really I'm really kind of excited about. But
That's
that was
so awesome,
totally-
man.
Yeah, it was so unexpected. I wasn't even looking for it, and here there was a community that was like maybe 20 years ahead of me. I thought I was like, look how progressive I am, Yeah, right. In fact, one time I was having a conversation with a few of them, and a person used the phrase. They said, "Well, when we were marching with King, I thought to myself, holy crap,
What? Oh
what
my
do you mean?"
gosh.
Yeah, no, they lived through this tumultuous time of the 1960s, and were part of it, part of the
Wow.
progressive voice of change back then. So anyway, I'm learning a lot from them. So I don't know. There's loneliness, and then there's like some camaraderie in one's loneliness. It's like the ugly duckling myth, Some of us just feel like we don't fit in, but then every once in a while we stumble into the ugly duckling. I think is a swan in the myth,
Yep.
and at the end, there's a kind of surprise encounter with, oh yeah, there are more of us. There are other people like me. So anyway, yeah, what am I doing? I teach at C3. I occasionally lead trips to Israel, and most of my other work is wilderness-based, underworld guiding, which is like a kind of a crazy term. I've been a part of this place called Animus for a couple of years now. This is a place in Colorado, and psychotherapist named Bill Plotkin started it in the 1980s. So these are sort of wilderness, nature-based retreats and programs that are meant to deepen a conversation with soul, deepen one's relationship with the natural world. And I've been really into this kind of work for a while. Now I'm in kind of their guiding program. I think one reason I'm into it is because that's just what I'm into. And I have been since I was a kid. I felt at home outside and not in a church building. I just didn't know. First of all, that's just part of the natural shape of the psyche itself. We are, we've evolved and come to know who we are in relationship with the natural world. And that's one reason why people are so starved. They're starving spiritually, in part because the appetite of the natural world is not being consumed. And nature mirrors back to us what we have a hard time seeing about ourselves. There's a reason why the Desert Fathers went out to the wilderness, is because it mirrored back to them their own emptiness, and their own thirst for God, I suppose. You'd have to ask them, but just imagine that to be the case. But
So good.
anyway, I love both going on programs and retreats like this, but now also leading a few here or there, sending people out into the natural world and helping them listen to their own lives. And it's a sacred thing. It's a sacred, important thing. And I think, if I could exaggerate for a moment, I think the future of humanity depends upon a kind of return to a more natural relationship with the wild world. And if we lose that, we lose ourselves, like Gary Snyder says, to speak of wilderness is to speak of wholeness, and human being came out of that wholeness. And so people don't feel whole. Yeah, it's in part because they're not in the natural world that includes them in its own meta wholeness, if that makes sense.
That is good stuff.
Oh, man. I know we're running out of time, but I think this just gives us an excuse to try to plan something in the future. I know one of our friends, George Benson, who's from the area, had talked to us a while ago. He's like, you guys need to plan a live event in Grand Rapids and get a hold of Kent and see if he'd be interested. So I think this is a good excuse to try to get something together.
Let's do it, man. Let's stir some stuff up.
That'd be great. Yeah. And you're not that far. So let's do it.
No, about 3 hours, I think. So.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
I love it.
Before we let you go, though, I know a lot of people listening are going to want to get a hold of your book and stay on top of what you're up to. So what's the best way to get a copy of the new book, and the best way to stay on top of what you're up to and what you're working on?
Yeah, well, Amazon, this mega beast from the sea, is the best way to get the book. So you can get the audio, you can get the digital, you can buy the hardback. So that's the best way. And I have a website, kentdobson.com, that I try to keep up with, but retreats, programs, all of the things that I'm kind of into, I try to funnel through there, trips to Israel, that kind of stuff. But that's definitely the best way. And there's a contact form on there. And that's the way to get in touch. Thanks for asking.
Oh man, that's great. This has been so much fun. We've hit so many. I feel like what we did is like introduce like 10 podcast episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, we just touched on all these really great, pools of richness and depth. And I hope that it just encourages people to get out there and interact with your work and the places that your work ends up taking them to other people and places. I wrote like 6 authors down while we were talking today. So I hope other people do that too. But thank you for giving us your time. This has just been awesome, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much. I really support what both of you are up to, and it's a good thing in the world. It's a needed thing in the world, especially for those of us who are fumbling around in the dark. It's nice to stumble into something like this. It sort of says you're not crazy. You might be crazy, but you're not totally crazy. So yeah, keep it up.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, you might not be crazy because you're feeling like this, but you might still be crazy.
Yeah. That's why God made therapists.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks a lot, man. We really appreciated this, and we got to do it again.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Awesome, dude. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I think I just died of a broken heart, and I can't stay here with the lies you swore, and I can't lay here between love and war.
Man, can he be like an honorary, like, deconstructionist?
I know. I really enjoyed that.
There's just certain people that, part of the reason we do this show is to expose ourselves to voices, contrary to our own, in a way, or just, unique new perspectives, a way of seeing things that we hadn't thought of before. But then sometimes you meet somebody like Kent, and you just feel just kindred spirit, and you're just like, oh, thank you for just being you.
And his story is so interesting too, because in a lot of ways it's similar to Rob Bell's, where they both were lead pastor at Mars Hill for a time, this massive mega church, and then at some point they just felt this need to leave the church.
Yeah.
Well, not even really leave the church, but like stop being a pastor of a mega church.
Right.
And
so leave the church.
But still serve the church in a different way. Maybe they didn't even know what that was going to look like when they left.
Gets so tricky, doesn't it?
It does.
All that language gets so tricky.
The world's the church, right? So like,
oh man,
so he goes on this spiritual journey years back, and he goes on this journey anyway to try to like experience a spiritual awakening or the spiritual
divine
moment.
Yeah.
Ends up literally getting his arm swallowed by a...
I mean, it's so funny because, like, what a metaphor.
It's really funny.
It's so funny. I appreciated so much about just the honesty in his story that, you know what? There's an aspect of life where somebody has given us, or even almost like Inception style, like planted a seed that either life or spirituality or church or something is supposed to look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, or vibe like this.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be this. And then, this is the goal. This is what we're all trying to like go for. And I know a lot about this, like from my own personal experience. It's like good Christians look like this, know these kinds of things and feel like this and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, you are just emulating an expectation that somebody embedded.
Yeah.
And what you end up going to Mount Sinai, literally or figuratively,
Yeah.
and climbing it only to realize that you just feel kind of let down.
Yeah. Or God sends you a sign that doesn't look like the one that you expected.
That happens a lot of times.
God's like, I'm going to have this camel swallow your arm up to your elbow. What do you think about that?
There's so much richness in that. I don't even want to like overanalyze it. I just kind of want to let it speak for itself. But like, I just feel like so many people, part of their deconstruction comes from just sheer disappointment.
Yeah.
And disappointment is like, what does Richard Rohr say? Every expectation is a disappointment waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's the whole everything belongs, like the naked now kind of just, no, like the divine isn't something you need to look for or achieve or work up or nothing. It's here. Just calm, just chill.
Yeah.
You need to chill.
His ability to use that as a metaphor, you know, the being bitten by a camel and like use that as the foundation of this book is just so clever and so profound. And I know he doesn't get into it in great depth on our interview, but if you haven't heard his interview with Rob Bell on the Robcast, like definitely listen to this one for sure. Go check out the one
I
on
prefer the one
Robcast.
with Pete Rollins too.
Oh, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
I think that's the one you told me you listened to.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Pete Rollins actually has a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know if people even know that.
Is it just called the Pete Rollins Podcast?
I think so.
Let me pull it up. Pete started it forever ago, our boy Pete. And then he didn't do anything with it for a while. And now he's really getting back into doing a lot of these Facebook Live, almost like I almost feel like it's like a class almost, you know, like he has
so
a
good.
topic. Yes,
Yeah,
it's called Peter Rollins.
Yeah, he puts up his pyro seminars. He puts up all kinds of other things. Anyway, there is a episode and it's just a great conversation between him and Kent Dobson.
Yep, from July 29th.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. You guys need to check it out. But like Kent is one of those guys. Connect with him.
Yeah.
You know, he'll respond back. Hit him up on Twitter. Like whatever. He'll respond back. He wants to interact. He's one of those guys that like we're just lucky to have on the show because he's got so many good things to say. I mean, that interview, I already want to go back and listen through the whole thing.
Yeah. And we're really going to try to make it happen, but like we've been meaning to get back to our second home in Grand Rapids.
Oh, Grand Rapids.
Such a cool town. And
such a cool town.
He's still there, you know, he's still from there. And so we're going to try to make some sort of coordinated live event happen with him at some point in this year.
Some kind of deconstructed get together.
Yeah, like we're trying to figure out what that's going to look like. Do you guys have any ideas?
Send us some ideas on what
we don't.
What we don't want to do is like we feel like a lot of get-togethers end up just being the same sort of conference mentality that's basically like church, but it's not church. Here's your speaker. Here's some music. You sit there. You know, do what, you know, basically we tell you to do. And we want something different. We want something interactive. We want something, disruptive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't know what that is though.
Although I'm all for emulating or like doing some sort of like deconstructionist communion. I think that would be pretty sweet.
Oh yeah.
We bring in some like legit unleavened bread and some wine.
Dude, I'm all about the sacrament.
Yeah. That'd be pretty sweet.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
So what music we got here, man?
Oh man. So, all right. This guy is freaking awesome. And
so good.
If you haven't heard of this guy before, he's from good old Canada. I honestly like have this deep love for our Canadian brothers and sisters. Like
I know.
It's not, and I don't think it's a stereotype to say that they're all just so nice.
They're so nice.
I'm sure you have jerks up there too. I know you do, but like
you're not known for it.
You're not known for it. And we could learn some things.
You're known for Sarah Bessie.
Sarah Bessie and that handsome devil you have as your prime minister.
He's such a handsome devil.
Trudeau, who can like, have you seen the video of him like dropping some knowledge on like, it was like computer science or something weird. And I was just like, he's like, I could talk about this all day. I was like, I don't know what you just said. but it was impressive. But anyway, so this guy's from Canada. He's a phenomenal musician. His name's John Bryant. Super cool guy. Apparently listens to our show. I had no idea.
Thank you, John Bryant.
If I'm wrong, I apologize. But yeah, I mean, just super nice guy, phenomenal musician. So if you like bands like City and Color and Ray LaMontagne, that sort of thing, it kind of has that vibe to it.
Americana rock.
Well, I mean, at this point in the show, you would have already heard it. So
Right. So good.
But check him out. And as always, please go out and support those musicians. They're nice enough to give us permission to use their music for free since we don't have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, go check them out. Follow them on social media. Go buy their music. Tweet at them, whatever. Let them know that we sent you. It helps us get other musicians. And as always, thanks for your support in general. Like the Patreon campaign has just been absolutely phenomenal. It brings me so much joy to like pack up all that stuff to ship out. Like I always have this
joy,
giant stack of like shirts and buttons and books and whatnot getting ready to go out. So
it's so much fun to do this.
It is.
Yeah. You guys don't even know. We're all creating something together that is going to last.
Yeah.
This isn't going anywhere. This kind of conversation, we're one of many.
Yep.
And it's a spirit that is going to continue. And, you know, plugging away as we do just to like get new voices on and try to encourage you guys to have conversations. Like, please be having conversations.
Yeah.
Tell us about those conversations. What kind of conversation did you have based on this episode with somebody or another episode? We want to hear these stories because it is all about not being afraid anymore, about where you are or where you're going or anything like that. But it's just about being here and just engaging and enjoying it. And finding that to be in itself a worshipful experience. We have got so much good stuff cooking for you guys for next year already.
Don't even know.
And it's going to be so much fun. So just continue to be kind, continue to be good listeners, and continue to have these types of conversations. And thank you for supporting us in our endeavors to make these spaces possible.
Keep sending us pictures too. I love seeing pictures of you guys wearing your gear and or like conversations. Like I've seen people posting, you know, notes that they've written down after listening to an episode. I think that's super cool. Our pal Melissa Kircher, who oftentimes will be inspired after an episode of not just our podcast but a bunch of other podcasts, and she creates art based off of just her visceral experience to listening to whatever the conversation was, and just create some phenomenal art. So check her out on Instagram too, because she usually posts it afterwards, and she had a really cool one for last week's episode. So
yeah, put that in the show notes.
For sure.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. We love doing this, and thanks to Kent Dobson for being with us. Definitely check him out in the show notes also. And for now, we are your hosts. I'm Adam Narlock.
And I'm John Williamson.
Keep deconstructing.
Do I break all the rules or draw back to the line? Here I wait for a light, burning minutes in red. There's a road of desire from my heart to my head. I go round and round and I'm losing control. There's a road from my heart to my head, and it ebbs and it flows. Oh, I'm starting to wonder, are we any closer? Our hearts growing fonder. Oh, as the road gets longer, I can't put to words just how much that I want her to leave and run away with me. Am I dreaming too much? Am I bending the truth? Oh, I can't trust how I feel when I'm staring at you. Here I lay for the night while you throw up your arms. 'Cause I traded it all for these trenches and charms. And we go round and round and we're losing control. There's a road from my heart to my head. It's and it flows. Oh, I'm starting to wonder, are we any closer? Our hearts growing fonder. Oh, as the road gets longer, I can't put to words just how much that I want her to leave and run away with me. Oh, I'm starting to wonder, are we any closer? Our hearts growing fonder. Oh, as the road gets longer, I can't put to words just how much that I want her to leave and run away with me.
This time of year, a good hoodie is absolutely essential. And the American Giant Classic Full Zip Hoodie is made to last a lifetime. With timeless style, heavyweight fleece, and durable details, you can depend on it for years to come. Snag the hoodie that will bring you comfort for life, the American Giant Classic Full Zip, and save 20% off your first order at american-giant.com when you use code CLASSIC24 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com. Code CLASSIC24.
88% of the workweek is spent communicating, so it's important your team does it well. Enter Grammarly. Grammarly's AI helps teams communicate clearly the first time. It shows you how to make words resonate with your audience, helps with brainstorming, and lets you instantly create and revise drafts in just one click. Join over 70,000 teams and 30 million people who use Grammarly to move work forward. Go to grammarly.com/enterprise to learn more. Grammarly, enterprise-ready AI.